Hi everyone, how are you today? I hope all is well. I know that the weather's crazy, isn't it? Yesterday it was 80 some degrees here, and today it was snowing. It's just crazy, but spring is kind of always that way, isn't it? Ups and downs, but we have the beautiful trees blooming and so many other gorgeous things happening out there. I love spring. It's my favorite time of the year. But today I want to talk to you about this convergence of events that we're seeing right now in our world. And, this is so important to take a look at this stuff because I feel like we're not really getting all of the news. We're not getting facts and truth. I have a crazy cat next to me right now. Um, but anyway, before we get started today, I wanted to start with Psalms 34:19. It says, "Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all." Isn't that beautiful? And that is something to keep in mind today as we go through this news, because it can be really discouraging if you're not careful. Um, and that's probably why I don't go over the news all of the time. Um, but honestly, for me, it's quite encouraging because, it helps me to realize that we are so close to the Lord's coming. We are so close to meeting him, right? And that's really what encourages me. And that's what gives me so much hope in these times is the knowledge, that I will be with him soon, and so will you. So um, today, though, when you look at the things in the world, it seems that everything has gone crazy. And there's so many things occurring all at the same time on this global scale, right? And that makes it kind of difficult to focus on those things that are important. And today I'm going to try to bring us back to focus. And I also want to encourage all of you to be prepared as Joseph prepared, okay? It is so important for us. We know what's coming and we need to be ready. We need to be ready. So, but anyway, I don't know how many pre-tribbers are in my audience. I don't know how many post-tribbers, mid-tribbers, you know, but regardless of where you stand on the tribulation, I don't care. I've been in different camps myself in that. But honestly, this is going to encourage you no matter where you stand on, at what point you believe that the tribulation begins. It doesn't matter. So the first horse, the white horse, that goes out conquering and to conquer. So some of us, believe that it is our current president. And, truth being, though, we don't know for sure. We suspect him. But I also want you to understand that I do recognize that we could all be wrong, and of course I could be wrong. And that's why I was so hesitant at first to even come out and say that I thought it was him. And the only reason I actually finally did come out and say it is because I worried that people wouldn't be warned if it did turn out to be him. I really wanted to, to warn people because it is important. It really is important that that people are aware that this is a possibility. So, but there are many different trains of thought about this white horse. In Revelation 6:2, that, it's a rider with a bow and a crown was given to him, and he goes out conquering and to conquer. So my assumption is that this horse began riding when he was elected. Okay, that's my assumption. I could be wrong. But some people actually do disagree with that, right? Some people suggest that that we're about 8 to 10 years out from the return of Christ. which would mean that they don't believe that this rider on the white horse has come out yet. But you know, honestly, I can't agree or disagree with that because I don't know, you know, exactly why they're drawing that conclusion. I don't know the details of their theory. I don't, you know, I don't really understand the reason why they have a different perspective. So, I mean, they could be right. You know, it's possible that this horse may not ride until he oversees a global empire, right? It's possible. So we're going to have to see, really, we have to wait and see how this, you know, pans out. And we just have to play it by ear, I guess. But anyway, we're going to know we should know within the next few years if this is him. Anyway, so when you look at everything, when you look at Venezuela, you look at the war with Iran, and, you know, we're actually in the process of obtaining Cuba. And I just want to point out the awful situation in Cuba for those poor people. You know, this isn't even on the news most of the time. You don't see anything about it, but those poor people are suffering. This is impacting, you know, those people over there. It's just awful. But he also wants Greenland and he wants Canada, right? And I actually suspect that he will eventually force Mexico into submission as well. But you can actually see him kind of laying the groundwork for that right now. If you look at the White House's website, the Trump administration has designated illicit fentanyl and its core precursor chemicals as weapons of mass destruction. And what does that actually do? That basically made it a national security threat. And, you know, so this allows them to preemptively strike militarily, and they can strike wherever they want based on this. He's also imposed tariffs on foreign countries, which has put a lot of strain and stress on them. And of course, he's got the Board of Peace, which, you know, he could use against other countries, and he could dissolve the United Nations. So there's a lot of things that he can do through, you know, these sorts of things that he's creating and doing to, you know, oppress governments, to you know, put the stress on them to try to take these governments and all sorts of things. So, but if you look at the next horse, as we look at this, keep in mind that the man who is conquering, he may be a large part of the reason so many will die. Okay, when the red horse rides, you know. So, you know, he comes in and he appears a certain way, right? They always say to bring peace and so forth. But, you know, it's interesting that the second horse takes peace from the earth. And yet he's going out conquering and to conquer, even though he is a white horse that appears peaceful. So, and it just fits so well, doesn't it? So that's all he's done is talk peace, but what is he actually doing? Right? And that's kind of my thinking, you know. This is where my attention has been directed, though, looking for this second horse, which is the red horse of Revelation 6:3. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." And out came another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so the people should slay one another. And he was given a great sword. See? So, you know, out marches this white horse, going out conquering and to conquer. And then peace is taken from the earth by a red horse, a bright red horse. And you know, honestly, bright red, what's that stand for? Blood. And war, right? And all sorts of horrible things. And I don't want to get my video banned, so I have to be a little bit careful. But this second seal plainly represents conflict, war, destruction, maybe terrorism, maybe any combination of these things, right? And it's interesting that there is a great sword, and that sword, when you see a sword like this, it's likely representing judgment. And, look at the Roman Empire. What kinds of swords did they carry? And how many people were killed? So this is likely a horrific period of time. And we don't know if this has begun yet. Is this starting this? We don't know. So I guess we're gonna have to wait and see. But in recent years, there's actually been a series of high intensity and far-reaching conflicts, that dominate global affairs on scales not seen since World War II. So there are conflicts in at least 29 different countries right now across the world, and most of us aren't even aware of this. But, you look at the war with Israel and the U.S. against Iran. This war has included groups like Hezbollah, and, they have actually fired hundreds of rockets at Israeli civilians. Well, you have, the U.S. bombing schools, or bombing a school. I'm sorry, just one that I know of. And now Israel is threatening to invade Lebanon. And we know that China and Russia have jumped on board and they're providing weapons to Iran. But the FBI is too warning of drone attacks on the United States West Coast. So we don't know. We don't know where this war is going. We don't know how bad this is going to get. Is this going to morph into Ezekiel 38? We just don't know yet. We have to see how this plays out. But one thing I am confident about is that when they're done, I have no doubt that they will believe that they finally have peace. So they will have this illusion of peace. And it will likely, that and anti-Semitism, I think it will draw Jews back into their land. That's my opinion. But if the red horse reflects war, okay, I expect the red horse to lead to that black horse. In Revelation 6:5, when he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and its rider had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. And do not harm the oil and wine." So, this grain or bread, okay, has been used for years and years and years to measure inflation because it's a major food staple, bread is. So the usage of a day's wage for this specific measure of grain is just enough to keep a person alive. And, this account is likely describing the struggle of middle class and poor people in obtaining enough food to feed themselves, while the rich, the oil and the wine, they're largely unaffected by this inflation. So that's why I said prepare for what's coming. So, there's so many things right now that are occurring because of this war. And then, we had the war between Russia and Ukraine. That's impacted our food supplies. But we'll get into all that. But if the red horse is at least in part from war, it usually leads to, supply chain disruptions. Every time we have a war, the Strait of Hormuz, we have oil and gas increases. Fertilizers also travel through there, which is going to impact our food supply and cost of food and so forth. Because we're going to have limited amounts of food because of this, and we're going to have higher prices, as all of these things kind of work together. But Illness too. Think about this. In 2019, how did that impact inflation and supply chains? When you look, I saw this article in Brownsfield Ag News from February 26th of this year. The weekly cost of groceries since 2020 has gone up, it says 40% for households. Okay, but in all honesty, it looks like this affordability crisis, it's been brewing since 2019. You know, and it says 40%. I don't know about that, okay? But to me, it feels like it's been far worse than 40%. I've seen some things double, you know, and maybe that's just an overall thing. I don't know. But anyway, then we have trade wars and tariffs. And those things are certainly not helping us, you know. A sudden surge in utilities caused by data centers, aging infrastructure, climate change, and tariffs. And then you have increased homeowner taxes, food prices, increased homeowners and auto insurance, increases in medical insurance, new vehicle costing an average of $50,000, you know. And housing costs that are skyrocketing. Now gas prices are skyrocketing. So the truth is, when these prices move up, it becomes this cycle, an inflation cycle, and it causes further inflation, you know? Like when your fuel costs go up, what's that do? That increases the cost of goods. And then you have increasing housing prices, and when that happens, that raises your property taxes, it raises your insurance, you know, all these things. And before you know it, you have this huge affordability crisis that you see now, right? So many of us, and myself included, okay, we have 3 generations of people that live in our home. So my husband and I actually bought this house together with my mother. Okay, it has 2 separate living quarters. My mom lives in part of it. We live in the other part, and our daughter lives with us. Just so we can afford housing and food. Yeah, and we drive a vehicle from, you know, it's a 2010 vehicle. So, you know, and we struggle, and I'm sure you all do too. It's not any different for anybody across this country. It's hard, you know, and but it's getting worse. That's the problem. According to CNBC and MarketWatch, a record number of people are taking from their 401k just to pay their bills, because, you know, they're having financial problems. And I can't blame them, honestly. You know, when you have to use your credit card to pay a vet bill, when you have to use your credit card to afford, you know, groceries or anything, right? It's so bad. But none of these examples actually take into account the large number of people who will lose their jobs because of AI. You know, this has already begun. Just the mere mention of AI, you know, suddenly employers are dropping their employees, and you have people out of the workforce. And it's going to impact the poor the most, right? People, you know, that are living paycheck to paycheck, people like us. But anyway, not only is the military using AI, so I have to get into this right here. So here's the thing. There's been this war lately, a war over who controls AI, okay? And we have the government fighting with private companies. And, you know, we're watching everything ramp up. AI is really something we need to keep our eyes on, honestly. So per the Associated Press, Politico, and Reuters, have you heard of the United States AI first warfighting force? So I hadn't heard of this. In a January 9th memo, Pete Hegseth announced to senior Pentagon officers an AI first warfighting force in which he called for the freedom to use AI technology as they please. Elon Musk's XAI has agreed to allow the US government to use their technology, Grok chatbot, to process data from military intelligence, weapons development, and battlefield operations, using Grok to process massive amounts of military and intelligence data to help them make military decisions and assist with battlefield operations. Now, just imagine this, that we are going to let AI make battlefield decisions, right? I just saw yesterday, I think the AI made something like 50% of the time errors in deciding whether someone needed immediate medical care or not, right? And we're going to let it make battlefield operation decisions and things like this. This is insane. This is really insane. But not only is the military using AI, but Department of Homeland Security is spying on Americans. The Guardian's article titled "Congress Must Prevent AI Surveillance. The Anthropic Feud Proves It." That's the name of the article. So most of us are familiar with the Anthropic Feud. They are now suing the Pentagon over receiving a supply chain risk designation. It basically blacklisted them, their company. It's terrible. It can destroy a company. But Anthropic maintained two red lines in this whole argument, stating its AI could not be used for mass domestic surveillance of Americans or the development of fully autonomous lethal weapons. That was their hard line, right? Not a bad hard line, is it? That's a good thing to protect Americans. But the Pentagon, backed by our president and our Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, demanded the ability to use the technology for any lawful purpose, okay? They said no. And that's where it got them. But, you know, of course, they'll just find someone else. So the Defense Department and other federal agencies already take the position that they can lawfully purchase Americans' private data, including location, history, and web browsing records, and search that data without a court order. That's right. So although bipartisan coalitions in Congress have long criticized these warrantless searches, they've so far failed to end them, okay? The problem is poised to become far worse with AI. According to New York Times reporting on the contract negotiations, the Pentagon wanted to apply AI to the collection and analysis of unclassified commercial bulk data on Americans, such as geolocation and web browsing data. Not only does the reporting confirm that the government is, in fact, collecting Americans' private data in bulk, but it shows that the Pentagon wants to deploy the world's most powerful tools to exploit this immense and controversial pool of data. So this is frightening. This is really frightening that they could get a hold of all of this information about us. Who knows what they could do with this, right? They could control us. They could threaten us. I mean, who knows what they could do? So, and it looks like they're getting away with all this stuff, and our Congress is allowing it. They're doing nothing to protect Americans, nothing. So, the mark of the beast or precursors. Now, when you look at this, right, we really need to pay attention to this. AI does play a part in this, but it's another detail that's actually converging along with these other things, you see. So if you want a detailed video about Trump's USD1, you can look up a video I did a little while ago. The mark of the beast is right under your nose, okay, where I actually go through the information about this USD1 that's owned by his company. It's owned by his company, and it's his company, sorry. And so Witkoff and him are partners in this company and their sons, okay? And from Reuters on the digital dollar front, the Board of Peace and Trump's company, World Liberty Financial, that has this USD1, it's a 1-to-1 ratio with the US dollar, okay? So they've connected it with the US dollar. It may roll out the use of its digital stablecoin, USD1, in Gaza. Remember, Pakistan is already using this. So, and the reason that they're giving to roll out this stablecoin is due to Gaza's shortage of physical cash and a collapse of traditional banking. So see, when banking collapses and you have a shortage of physical cash, which we have in this country, you know that, they start using things like this, right? And by the way, the UAE owns 40% of the stock in his company, possibly posing a national security risk. So World Liberty Financial Trust, which is a company also owned by his family, Trump's family and Witkoff's, right? They have applied and they're going through the process of getting a national trust bank charter to operate as a regulated national trust bank, allowing for more direct integration into the U.S. banking system. Okay. Now, there are many that do not believe that this USD1 will become our national currency. Okay. There are many that actually believe that this will be just used internationally, which is possible, but doesn't matter if it ends up taking over the market and basically making the US dollar, you know, sweeping it to the side. You know what I'm saying? So in any case, you know, him creating this digital currency is really, to me, a frightening foreshadow of the mark of the beast. But anyway, on to the next. So the media is another problem, and I'm pretty confident that they're controlling the narrative and keeping info from us. You know, they're banning photographers from the Iran war briefings. And AP News reported that his administration has implemented tighter control over White House press access, including handpicking media outlets for briefings, reducing the role of traditional war services, and restricting access to the upper press area. So these actions, which include giving more prominence to right-wing or aligned outlets, have been criticized as a threat to transparency and an effort to limit accountability. So not only is he controlling who is present, but he's insulting and intimidating journalists, you know, so that they are deterred from asking difficult questions. And you've seen this, you know. And I've also seen an awful lot of stuff lately on foreign news pages, but and about the U.S., and they're not being reported in the U.S., these things. Now, why is it that I have to look on like Jerusalem Post or anything like that to get news that I should be getting inside of the United States about our country? And I'm not finding it. Okay, so anyway, in addition to all of this, the U.S. media landscape has shifted to favor him. His administration is enabling mergers that will unite CBS, CNN, HBO, the Warner Brothers Studios, and all of this under the Ellison family's control, who also have a large stake in TikTok. Okay, Larry Ellison has been a financial supporter of our president since 2016. And David, his son, was seen at the 2026 State of the Union as a guest of Senator Lindsey Graham. So make no mistake about this, okay? He is controlling the narrative. He has these people in his back pocket. And we have seen, I mean, it's crazy how everything, I mean, he, even right down to when he created his USD1, there's so it's disgusting. If people only knew, if you saw how he has manipulated everything to make loads of money, and, to gain control. I mean, this is insane. So, and the next thing I fear for is our voting rights. I'm not sure that our voting will even impact anything, honestly. But I think everybody in this country, they want free and fair and honest elections. There's no doubt in my mind. Everybody wants that. And that's why we have laws and we have a constitution in place already to protect us, right? And I voted in places like, I voted in New York when I lived in New York, upstate New York, in an area, it's called Central New York. So it's in the middle of the state. When I voted there, I never had any issues. It was a blue state, even though we had mainly a red population in those areas. And I didn't have to show identification, but I didn't have long lines. I didn't have any problems. Nobody was intimidating me. I voted here in this very, very, very red state, okay? The worst red state you can imagine. And I won't say what it is because it's polar opposite of New York, okay? But anyway, I thought they were pretty red in New York, but they're very red here. And I was red at the time. So, but anyway, the truth is here, I went to vote one time and it was very intimidating. I had to, of course, show her my license, which, I have no issue with that, but I showed her my license. She was very intimidating, asking me questions, staring me down, all of this stuff. And the wait to vote was so long. I don't see how any elderly person or disabled person could vote like that. And I actually cannot vote because the wait is too long because of my disabilities. So, and my mother cannot vote. She's 76 years old. She can't stand in line that long. And I'm not really sure how difficult it would be to get, mail-in, registration or anything like that. But anyway, would it matter? That's my question. So if we all vote and we get, we put Democrats in place, for instance, will it matter? Will it stop him? And I'm not discouraging you from voting because I think you should vote. I'm not that kind of person. But if you feel that you should vote, vote. Okay. I have stepped out of politics. I can't really agree with either side. But anyway, my point is it going to change? Is it going to stop him? Is it going to do anything? That's what I wonder, And like I said, I'm not sure that means that we should quit voting either. But how do you choose between two evils? I don't know. I just really don't know. But anyways, that's between you and the Lord, and you should pray about that. And anyways, I kind of think that after he's done really pillaging the U.S. and, plundering whatever he can, once he leaves office, if he ever does leave office, he will just move with his Board of Peace and plunder the world. So, and that's my fear. And, in some respects, maybe that fits better that he does leave office and rules from this Board of Peace and hope that he does not put one of his supporters in office behind him, because it'll be just like him still running the United States. We'll never be rid of him. But anyways, so I don't really want to get into politics that much, but all of this being said, right? And I could go on for hours about this stuff, but let me know if there's anything that I did miss or anything that you would like to be informed about or me to look into. I'm happy to do it. But do you see all of this converging? I certainly do. And we have all of these global things coming together at the same time that are creating this perfect storm. So anyway, I will see you guys next week. And I really do hope and pray that you are blessed and that you're safe. And I'll see you later. Bye.